Okay, good morning, dear friends, and just a few words about the title of this presentation, because when Zeliko proposed me to hold a plenary, I was obviously happy, proud, and also terrified, because the problem was how to avoid to be to annoy you, to be considering that my expertise is mainly on fatigue propagation. It is a well-known topic, and I prefer to propose a title that was not strictly scientific. I mean, some considerations about the dissemination in structural integrity from the down of stabilization to the Web 3.0. I don't know exactly what is 3.0, but in any way, it was nice for the title. And talking to our younger colleagues, PhD students that maybe knows better than me fatigue propagation, I can tell to them the first steps for the preparation of a plenary lecture. The first one is, in the first 5 minutes, you are very happy, proud, and etc. So you can have a relax for 6 months between your first announcement, and then you can be terrified in the last month because you have to prepare your presentation. And when you have to prepare a plenary, always talking to our younger colleagues, you must consider pros and cons. Pros and cons, first of all, the cons. I am not an historian, and in the title there is the history. When I proposed to Zeliko this title, I didn't thought that it could be difficult to find information about history on this field. I'm not neither a mechanical engineering nor a civil engineering, and I am quite old, but I can count on the colleagues' indulgence because I'm not enough old. And finally, it is too late to simulate an health problem. So I must be here. The pros, I'm not bad with PowerPoint, web can help me, and maybe it is not too late to simulate a health problem. But I am here, so you need always talking to our younger colleagues, you must prepare an outline when you have to do a long presentation. 40 minutes is quite a long time. This is the first outline I could prepare for dissemination in no matter the topic. A group of primitive men around the fire talking about structural integrity in wheels, or talking about news about a new invention like fire, something like that. Then we could talk about papers or PDF. I mean, what happened in the history for dissemination. You could read a book, or you could read a paper, you could follow something online. And then the last news about dissemination using AI. AI is a very new approach to the web, and we will see that it is quite also dangerous to that. Well, AI, let's talk about AI. We start immediately on that. And I asked to the nice ChatGPT, please write the outline of a presentation on scientific dissemination in structural integrity. Why not? And I found that the answer was quite interesting, because it was a really nice list of topics that could be used to prepare a presentation with an historian approach to this presentation. Well, talking about this presentation, there is the first step we already did, so we are happy with them. We are following this step. Definition of structural integrity, everybody knows. It is important dissemination, we all agree, and we have an overview of the presentation. So the first step, according to this outline, is done. Well, I changed the request to ChatGPT. Please, ChatGPT, write some key points on the scientific dissemination structural integrity. The answer is different, so it's nice. It is a sort of answer of the Sibilla Cumana. I don't know if you know this history, but the answer of this Sibilla Cumana was different according to the requests you did. In this case, it is a less historian approach to the presentation, and it is nice that the methods of dissemination are clearly described in this list. So this outline is also quite interesting, but I will not follow neither of them. I will try to mix, I will try to do something different, but Anyway, let's remember AI, because at the end of our presentation, we will find that some weird consideration about that. Well, historical approach. Maybe the first importance of fracture is the chipped stone production. Some results of this procedure, some hammerstone to strike another raw material to produce sharp flakes. These were this sort of amygdala as a result, dates back to 3 million years ago. Well, the problem is the human beings, let's call them human beings, were able to talk in that period? Not at all. So maybe the dissemination in that period was based on imitation, probably, because it seems that the first evidence on the language dates back to 2,000 years ago, not more. Then 40,000 years ago, that's back some painters on the caves, on the walls of the caves, usually animals. There is not fracture mechanics on these walls, but anyway, the first paintings dates back to 40 years ago. And we have also some stones describing always animals, etc. that dates back up to 11,000 years ago. So, going to the story, we have the first name of the first structural engineer in Egypt, 2,700 before Christ. He was Imhotep. Maybe you remember the movie, the Mummy. It's not the same, but anyway, it was the author of the Step Pyramid, Pharaoh Joseph. This is the Step Pyramid, and I couldn't find any direct information about the dissemination of information about culture, about structural integrity, about the engineer problem. Many cases they propose that the approach was the try and error. The problem is that when you have an error, you can have an error of this dimension. For example, this is the unfinished obelisk. It is a cracked obelisk. And if the approach was try and error, maybe we could find more unfinished obelisk, but we found only one of them. So probably there were schools, there were some way to disseminate culture about structural integrity. We have this other important step with Babylonian laws, and it is written here, but well, we have the translation. If a builder builds a house for a man and does not make it construction firm, and the house which he has built collapses and causes the death of the owner of the house, that the builder shall be put to death. If it causes the death of a son of the owner of the house, they shall put to death the son of the builder. So it was very hard times for the son of the builders. These are, we could underline that, first of all, the main artifacts were the buildings, and the problem of their collapse was not so simple to be solved. If it was necessary to underline that you could die if something could collapse. Well, let's jump to ancient Rome, to ancient Greece. We have many details about the philosopher and so on, but not so many details about engineers. We are not so interested from the historian point of view, maybe, but the approach of dissemination were always papyri, parchments. Maybe in Rome, we have some military schools, for example, to build bridges, to build roads, to build buildings. And in this case, in all cases, the dissemination were always done by means of manuscripts. And we can jump from the historical point of view to 1455 with the first revolution, the Gutenberg revolution, the printing press. We don't have to think that 1455 is a cut in the history, before only manuscript, after only printed papers. Because, for example, in the case of Leonardo da Vinci, we have only manuscript from this guy, and we find, for example, Esperienza della forza che può fare un filo di ferro in varie lunghezze, where he proposed a tensile test machine for wires, and he found that the strength of these wires decreased with the length of these wires. We all knew that it is not correct. There are some reasons for that, but it is important to underline that he didn't printed his results. He also printed some interesting results about bending test. He also, wrote some interesting results about bending test about 100 years before Galileo Galilei. The difference is that Leonardo da Vinci wrote them on a manuscript, and this manuscript was discovered only 50 years ago after. And instead, Galileo Galilei printed them in a very clever way in order to avoid the Catholic Church. He printed them in Netherlands, and he printed them using with the help of Ludwig Elsevier. Maybe you know this name because we have the Dutch Elsevier company that was founded in 1880 using the name of the older publisher who published the books of Galileo Galilei, and he about to be on fire because you know that the Catholic Church in that period was not so nice with researchers. Well, let's jump to 6060. Let's go to Robert Hooke, the Hooke law. Everybody knows this law. Well, Hooke was not, he was a very clever guy. He was maybe the first researcher paid to be researcher. The Royal Academy paid him to produce 2 or 3 experiments per week to be shown in the Royal Academy. He had a very bad relationship with another interesting guy, Isaac Newton. And for this reason, all the paintings of Hooke were completely destroyed. Well, talking about dissemination, the law of elasticity was discovered in 1676, but it was not published as a book or in another way, but it was published as an anagram. This is the anagram you can find here. And only a few years after, it was translated in Latin as ut tensio sic vis, meaning as an extension, so the force. Many authors in that period published their results in sorts as anagrams, as ciphers, because they wanted to publish the result, but also they wanted to maintain the ownership of this discovery. So it was a sort of schizophrenic approach to the dissemination. Well, increasing the number of researchers in the world, it became more and more important to disseminate these researches. So it is important the first journals that started, the first one started in 65 in January, a couple of months after the philosophical transaction of the Royal Academy of Royal Society started the publication. They are still active now. Then we had the Memoire de l'Académie des Sciences, 1666. And it is interesting that the first peer-reviewed journal, Medical Study and Observation, was published 60 years after. So before peer review were not active as a procedure, and after it started to be used, but it's not the peer review we know today. Why? Because usually it was the only editor-in-chief that was in charge to review a paper. Not so many papers were submitted, so there was not a big pressure on the editor-in-chiefs. And also the researchers were not so happy about the peer review. For example, Albert Einstein was absolutely upset because the editor-in-chief, maybe you know the name, he was a Wiener Prize winner, Max Planck, asked to his co-editor to be helped to peer review these 4 important papers. Maybe you know the relativity, but it's not so simple to understand. So I can understand Max Planck that was yes, a winner prize, Nobel winner prize, but the papers were quite difficult, and he was absolutely upset for this procedure. Another weird approach to peer review was, for example, when Watson and Crick submitted the famous double helix, and the subsequent editor of Nature, John Maddox, wrote the Crick and Watson paper could not have been referred. Its correctness is self-evident. Nobody among the editor-in-chief will never write something like that, but today. And no referee working in the field, Niels Bohr is a very well-known researcher in this field, as an example, could have kept his mouth shut once he saw the structure. So the problem of the ownership of the research was always a problem, also just some years ago, so not so a long time ago. So the peer review process was very simple at the beginning. I mean, the editor-in-chief was able to perform the peer review and take a decision. Everything was done by traditional mailing system. It could take years to be published when the paper was accepted. Then it became necessary to have more people around the editor-in-chief, and so some people was on board on the editorial board. We can see that this process became more and more popular in the 70s years. And we have, for example, the launch of the journal Cells in 1974, where this procedure was considered as normal. I was already born because I was born in 66, so it's not so a long time ago. But obviously the increasing of the submissions, the boom of the publication implied the needs to increase the people involved in this process. And we have these weird people, reviewers. Everybody is a reviewer here, so I think that you can find yourself at least in this group. And in this case, there was the use of traditional mailing. Sometime you could send your figures, for example, already printed to the journal. Sometimes in the late 90s, you could send floppy disk or CDs and so on. And it was always a very long process. You could always take years to be published. And in the half of 90s and early 2000, it is weird because I started my activity as an analogical researcher. So I started sending papers by traditional mailing, and now I am not sold, but everything transformed. So for me, it was amazing. And then it started to be used also email to send the papers. Obviously, the emails in that period were not so performing, so it was necessary sometimes to send also figures by traditional mailing. So the process was always quite heavy, I must say, but always with this approach of these different steps. Obviously, many rounds are always possible. And now all the journals are based on cloud system. This cloud system have different performance depending on the choices, and this allows to close the process sometimes in a few weeks. So the timing completely changed in a few years, from years to be published to a few weeks to have at least a decision. Well, the peer review process, I will not read all the details, but as you can see that if we started with an editorial editor-in-chief that was in charge to close all the process, now we have different approaches. I mean, single blind, double blind, triple blind, open peer review, etc. Always with the aim to guarantee the highest quality of the published papers. About the quality, we will say something after a few slides. What about, the title is Dissemination Structural Integrity. Let's talk about our maybe first papers on structural integrity. All of them were not normally peer-reviewed. So our activity is based on non-reviewed papers, or at least reviewed according to an old approach that today would not be accepted. And it is interesting, maybe the story of the last one, the paper from Paris, maybe everybody knows, because it was prepared in 1957, but for 4 years it was not accepted by peer-reviewed journal. And at the end, Paris was forced to publish it in the Journal of University of Washington, a non-peer-reviewed journal, and the journal was the Trend in Engineering. So our research activity is based on non-peer-reviewed journal and papers. That's quite nice. So up to some years ago, this was the only procedure we could follow to publish. I mean, institution could pay subscription, authors could send their paper to the publisher, and the publisher could finalize the peer review process, the printing, and the papers were printed. And they were not able to everybody to be read. So we had also a large group of colleagues that were not able to read the paper. Sometimes also the authors were not able to read the paper they submitted to the journal. So it was a quite weird situation. Everybody changed in the last 20, 25 years with the boom of web because printing became more and more unusual as a way to disseminate our paper. The web became more and more important. And we have now the open access approach. From the point of view of money, now it is not necessary to pay to read, but it is necessary to pay to print or to be published. And it is paid by the institution or it is paid by the authors. The publisher is here and it publishes online, only online, the papers. We can have a different approach. Sometimes you can find different names or colors. So there is a sort of confusion about that. Gold, platinum, green, white, no matter what. Gold, somebody has to pay the article processing charge. The APC acronym is here. Hybrid, some subscription journal that allows you, because we are all authors, to open access your paper in a subscription journal. This is because it allows you to improve the visibility of your work and increase, this is important, references of this on this paper. Diamond or platinum journal, nobody pays, not exactly because the open access have a cost. And in this case, we have that somebody has to pay, for example, philanthropy, advertising, etc. The bronze approach or the green approach. The green approach is repositories that could repository pre-printing or post-printing, publisher version. It depends from the license you use for the publication. In the last years, many traditional publishers started to publish different kind of open access journals. So the number of journals, open access or under subscription journals, increased dramatically in these last 10 years, maybe. Well, the open access world implied the needs to define some new licenses. And in 2001, 2002, Lawrence Lessing and Eric Eldren defined these Creative Commons licenses. You can see here a short list, but the licenses, the number is higher. I will underline only the most open one, CC BY, where everything is allowed, but it is necessary that attribution to the authors of this paper. It is necessary to understand that they have no legal force, only a sort of gentleman agreements more than a legal force on the license. Anyway, they are quite used. Many papers, many journals. What is good, what is bad. Sometimes some new journals, especially some new journals, especially if well paid by in sort of open access approach, can easily publish without a very strong peer review process. Well, it became necessary to understand what it was good, of good quality, and what it was not of good quality. And Garfield, in the half of the last century, defined this impact factor, defined as the number of citations in the current year to items published in the previous 2 years, divided by the number of articles and the reviews published in the same 2 years. Sometimes 2 years were not sufficient. In some fields, 5 years, 3 years, etc. But it is not important, because it is important that there is a new point that is important to stress. You can publish very important papers, but it is important, more important, that your paper is used for citations. Otherwise, your paper simply do not exist. And in the time, we had new metrics, site score, SNIP, SJR. Here you can see some different definitions. I will not read all of them. I can simply tell you that in the time they became more and more esoteric, because, for example, you must, in this definition, find the word prestigious. What is prestigious? It is quite difficult to define a prestige. We all know our most prestigious journal, but if you want to find a number to define this prestigious, sometimes I find it is quite difficult. And obviously we have the H index defined by Hirsch in 2005, defined as the maximum value of H such that the given author journal, so it can be used for both for authors and for journal, has published at least H papers that have been cited at least H times. So if you want a high H index, you need high number of papers, but also high number of citations. And this is the problem. What is the quality? Is it a relative or an absolute value? According to all these metrics, this is a relative value. It implies that both for the authors and for the journal, we are always under sort of rat race. A sort of rat race where we are always pushed to publish as much as we can and to find a way to obtain as much as the highest number of citations. Fraudulent behaviors, in this moment, it is a quite hot problem. Maybe the most old approach to fraudulent behavior is the copy and paste. Up to some years ago, copy and paste was done. For example, you could copy a paper published in French, in Italian, you can translate and you can obtain a new paper. Now it is almost impossible, this kind of approach, but you have other different fraudulent behavior. For example, editor-in-chief who tried to push his own or her own journal, asking to the authors to cite his own or her own journal in their paper. Sometimes the citations are correct, sometimes they are forced. We can have the same behavior from some reviewers. All of you sometimes received some comments where an unknown reviewer, because it is always blind, suggests you 5 papers, 4 of them are of the same author. Maybe he's the same reviewer, maybe. And then we can have also some enterprises who sell you some references because maybe they're able to handle some weird journals, but they are also indexed. So in this case, you can increase your H index using this fraudulent behavior. And also you can have some groups of authors that organize themselves, citing each other and increasing in a fraudulent way their own H index. So these are only some examples because we can always find new ways to improve numbers. Anyway, luckily we have a different way to avoid these fraudulent behaviors. It is impossible to completely avoid them, but some possibilities are offered obviously by a serious peer review process, by plagiarism checkers, and these are the main way we, as the editor-in-chief and the editorial board, can check if a paper is copied and pasted, if the content is original or not. And then we have also new sheriffs in town. I mean, thanks to the web, we have blogs, we have social media, we have websites where there are always some continuous check on papers. And if they find some fraudulent behaviors, they publish this fraudulent behavior on their own platform. The problem of this approach is that there is an asymmetric behavior. The blogger can publish using his platform, and the risk of a media pillory is really high because it is impossible for the author, this is that was cited in this list of problem, to answer correctly, because maybe it was the blogger could be also wrong, because it is not the Bible what is written in this blog or in this website. Well, we talk about journals. Let's talk about conferences, because it is another way to disseminate content. Conferences are quite new as a way to approach. Why? But, well, we can see that they were always held. Only seismic shock, like the word war. I canceled this line, these words, because I found this statement online, but I didn't agree. But I wanted to stress this point, because maybe you remember that during the pandemic crisis, we were able to hold conferences online. And before and after 2019 is for us a moment where the approach to conferences changed a lot. Anyway, we had this increase of conferences thanks to infrastructure, social and political reasons. First of all, it was more easy to travel. So in this way, we started doing that. And conferences are always a nice moment to enjoy the places, to enjoy companies, to enjoy friendship. I suggest you this nice book, Small World by David Lodge. He describes the academic world in a very weird way. So it's very funny. So you can read it, and I hope you will find yourself in this nice book. Well, considering conferences, the main evolution were a group of scientists that organized a conference and then organized an association. For example, this is the history of ICF. ICF started, organized a conference, and then became an organization. Or a different approach, I mean, some scientific association that started organizing conferences. It is quite interesting a letter sent by a very serious guy, Charles Darwin. He sent this line: "We enjoyed, himself and the wife, our week beyond measure. The papers were all dull, but I met so many friends and made so many new acquaintances and took so many pleasant excursions." So from a very nice guy and very serious guy to find that he found all the presentation dull, it was quite interesting. Well, we have also other definition, technical conferences, small elite conferences, but I wish to stress also that especially in these last years, we must be always careful about conferences. There are some fake conferences. I mean, you go to the venue, and you don't find the conference. You only pay the fees, and the conference is not organized. I can tell you this true. Otherwise, some touristic conferences where the scientific content is very low, but you can enjoy wonderful places. And so you can, as Charles Darwin, enjoy the wonderful excursion. And obviously, we have the virtual conferences. Pros and cons, this is the list. I will not read the list, but now these virtual conferences are more and more popular because mainly they are cheaper thanks to the lack of venue and travel cost. Obviously, the in-presence conferences have many pros and cons. First of all, in-person networking can build stronger relationship. Or if you will read the Small World books, you will find other pros in these books. But anyway, it is important to stress that there is also, and we can see in this conference, the blended approach, where it is possible for people who has economical problems or maybe political problems can follow the conference at least in remote. Consider spreading of the dissemination in our field. We must remember obviously ICF and ESIS. We are here as ESIS members, so it is important to underline that it is quite important, our presence. And obviously, thanks to the web, we are able to have for the dissemination very important websites where you can find papers, blogs, etc. You can find many blogs dedicated to science and to mechanics and to structural integrity. And you can find also many social media. I wish to remember you the ASIS YouTube channel with 2,000 presentations. Thanks to Zelico, we will have also more of them after this conference, maybe 500 more or something like that. Let's hope. And these are the new way of dissemination. As a last considerations, AI. AI is developing now more and more. It is a quite aggressive way to produce dissemination. What I'm meaning, maybe who is more skilled on the web problem, in many cases you find a strong decrease of the download speed of your own website, for example, journal, etc. Because this platform start picking all the files in a hysteric way, and in order to create the platform for the AI. And I started some experiments. Dear Gemini in free version, write a scientific abstract 100 words on the fatigue propagation resistance in 17 for pH steel. This is the answer. I will not read the answer, but it is quite interesting because you can have this answer for a quick abstract in a few seconds. ChatGPT free version, same request, this is the answer. If you try many times, you obtain different answer. If you pay a few euros, the pay version, you can obtain this answer. And with the Geni.ai free version, you can also have some citations. So you can have in the AI the way to improve the H-index of somebody, I don't know on which basis, instead of other colleagues. So this is for the abstract. Okay, why not? I don't want to waste my time. Nobody will read my abstract. Let's prepare my abstract using AI. AI can offer you also the possibility to produce some experimental points. I've tried to obtain the fatigue propagation results in a GS400 ductile cast irons for a stress ratio of 0.5 following Paris law. The result must be shown as an Excel table because I had to use that for the diagram, with the stress intensity factor and crack propagation rate with at least 30 results. In the black dots, you can find my own. I can tell you what they were experimental, true. And with the red dots, you can find the results from the AI. They are far at the moment, but as you can see in a few seconds, the development of this platform is terrible. And also you can have some answer about metallographies or fracture surfaces. I asked the picture of the metallographic analysis of a ferric ductile cast iron observed using the light optical microscope at a magnification of 100. This is the result from the AI. This is the true metallographic analysis without an etching, because I don't want it very complicated. As you can see, we are still far at the moment, but the result will change. Fracture surfaces always created with ChatGPT pay version. Here you can see what I asked to the ChatGPT. This is the result. We are still quite far from the truth, but not so much. We can have a different request, and this is the result from Gemini, from ChatGPT. This is the experimental scanning electron microscope fracture surface analysis. We are still far, but not so much. Well, final comments. Peer review. As Churchill stated for democracy, peer review may be imperfect, but we do not yet know any better system. We have different approach to peer review. It depends from the editor-in-chief choices, which is the approach to be followed. We have a models of academic publishing that is really complicated at the moment. And in this moment, the numbers of the journals is almost crazy. There is a sort of war based on quality, on the possibility to offer new platform. Let's see what will happen. I don't know, frankly speaking. Journal or authors ranking. Frankly speaking, I don't like the rat race because according to me, quality is an absolute value, it's not a relative value. We must find a way to determine this quality value, but at the moment, frankly speaking, the metrics is based on the citations are not sufficient to define high quality or low quality. Fraudulent behavior, we must find a way to avoid it as much as we can, but always taking into account the credibility of our system and the credibility of the colleagues in order to avoid media pillory. AI is improving. At the moment, there is not a possibility to check if your text is produced by AI. There are some possibilities, but there are still experiments. But what is terrible is not the text. It is terrible the results. It is possible to create experimental results using AI. And so in the next future, it will be more and more difficult to understand. This is just an example using a photorealistic cat sitting on the sofa. Midjourney is a platform to create figures, pictures. And this is the evolution in just a few months. This is the last one. It is the same of the picture of my cat. I can tell you my cat is exactly the same. You can find in my face with my cat on my WhatsApp, account. So, talk about conferences, live conferences, virtual conferences, blended conference, fake conferences, etc. Join the true conferences, no matter which one, and avoid the fake conferences. Consider the touristic conference, maybe in your life, one or two touristic conferences, if you have sufficient money, you can enjoy. Blogs, websites, social media will be really useful, but we will find an equilibrium on the publication on this platform. I can relax and can enjoy the excursion, citing our friends, Charles Darwin. Thank you.